Okay, I'll lead off by stating that I do not public speak. I don't make a whole bunch of streaming videos. I don't intend to go around uh, making a whole bunch of stuff like this because I'm simply not someone who enjoys to speak publicly and explain things. But there's going to be some stuttering here and there because that's not what I like to do. Maybe not. Who knows? We'll see how it goes. All right. The point of this is to demonstrate this little EFI controller that I threw together. As I mentioned in the description, this took some effort for me to put together because I solely wanted to have it be as simple as possible. So anybody can just go grab it, throw it on there, and it'll just work with any sized engine, whatever configuration they got. It should not matter. And you shouldn't be sitting there spinning the engine over waiting for the controller to self-learn or to learn how the engine runs. It shouldn't need to do that. It should simply just immediately start up and go. So from there, I'll get into simply throwing it onto the machine, or the engine, and we can just skip over. I'll explain how it works at the end of this. This way we can just jump into the important part for, I believe, most people, which is just to get it to work. So I'll demonstrate first with a simple one by one engine with a single cylinder, just to keep it as basic as possible. I believe it's all it really needs. You've got air, you've got fuel, electricity, and it should be it. I mean, we really don't need it to really do anything, any kind of work, so I'll leave that open. And the battery should be plenty enough for it to run by itself. So I'll go throw down the controller. And it really should be all... Where is that? Really should be all it needs to have. I'll just hook it up right to a regular throttle. I'm not going to bother with a PID for the to get any kind of specific RPS. I'm just going to, you know, tune it on the fly and not worry about it. That should be fine. Okay, so when you're dropping this down here, I made sure that the two important values that you will change based off the engine will be right here. You can leave the fuel ratio as it is. If you set it any lower or any higher than that, the RPS will go down at the same throttle provided. So this seems to be the peak efficiency of ratio based off of how much work it can do at a given throttle. So I haven't done any actual fuel usage at the same RPS based off of the ratio. So I don't know if, let's say, 0.41 is any more efficient than, you know, 0.59, or in this case, you know, compared to 0.52. I didn't bother doing that. I just put a, you know, meter off it, gave it a load, and just gave it wide open throttle and tweaked the ratio to see what, you know, where it got peak RPS out of it, and that was it. So the only real input you need to put in here will be the pick whatever ratio it is. As I said, leave it as it is if you want to, and what size engine it is. You don't need. It doesn't matter how many cylinders you have. It's just what size the cylinders are. That's the only real important part of how what it needs to run by. And basically, if you're doing any configuration, the first thing you're going to decide on is what size it's going to be. So it shouldn't be a big of a deal to to give it, or be a problem to send to it. So you only need the engine RPS. You need to know what speed the engine's spinning at, and the composite from the cylinder, and it's only reading off the first channel, which is the airflow of the cylinder. Now, most people that go try to read this, there it is, air volume, they really don't get anything out of this, and that's because you need to multiply the value by 10,000. This controller won't work if you do it by 1,000 or 100,000. 10,000 is what it really works with. I'm sure you could get this to work if you change the whole thing based off of whatever that would be. Like, I'm pretty sure you could get it if you didn't multiply it, but then you're going to be changing the other values that I've put in there. And it actually shouldn't be hard to do, but I think this works best if you give it a number that's actually a value of 1, not a value of 0.00001 or something like that. So I think that should be good. As the composite, as that, they're all hooked up, throttle's hooked up. It's going to need a starter signal. Wow, alright. And hook up the power. Hopefully I do this in one take. That should work. Alright. What we should be able to do from here is give it a throttle, turn it on, try to get a good balance of where it needs to be. Sounds like it's happy there. Okay, now the ratio is 13:2. That's really the only thing I really cared about. I didn't care much about the other values. It was just that, because I figured, you I got a good value to work off of, and it'll run at just that. Temperature doesn't matter, the load on it doesn't matter, whether you're getting forced induction or natural aspirated, it doesn't matter, because the temperature doesn't change the efficiency of how the engine runs. It used to, it doesn't now. Because when these were first released, temperature was changing the fuel ratio, because it was changing. I guess it was changing the density of the air. I guess, I don't know. But then when we released it, that wasn't a thing anymore. So it doesn't matter if things running at 105 Celsius or in this case 21. It doesn't matter. The other things to keep track of: make sure you do not have infinite fuel on. What that'll do is that'll completely screw up the airflow rate that the controller's reading off of, and it simply will not run. You need to have that turned off. You need to have an actual, so I guess, I guess that kind of means that you can't run it in some kind of creative thing. You actually have to have a legitimate system going here for it to work, which I guess is a good thing, because most people using this should be using not the creative stuff for this. But simply as it is, it just reads, where's that? There it is. It just, throws in a 0.52 ratio wherever the air is at. And it does really work that way. The difference is that that will change depending on what RPS you're at. So if I crank this thing up, you'll notice that ratio will go up a little bit, but as soon as it gets close to balancing out to have the constant RPS, that fuel ratio will eventually go back down to 13.2. The only way that would go a little out, which is pretty much just 0.02 or 0.04. And I haven't really looked at how far it can go out, but I've given this thing the beans and then cut off to 0, and then all of it comes back to 0 again pretty rapidly to see if I can screw it up, and it really doesn't. It runs it and it has no problem with it. But yeah, it's got no problem at all doing all of that. that, let's throw on a simple force induction as we can do. A basic pump. And this flows the absolute minimum in terms of, in this case, air that you can go with. But I'll also throw on a larger pump as well to demonstrate that. That should be the intake, yep. And I'll give, let's throw throttle on the belt, just to show it really doesn't matter. You can go either way, and it really doesn't make any difference. So I'll just tack that on, and throw this onto. Well, actually, I'll leave that there for now, but I'll put a button on here for the pump. Actually, this will not run with the pump off, and I'm sure people who know how these work understand that, so. Yeah, that's all I'm going to do. Shouldn't need anything else. So obviously with the pump off, you're going to get absolutely nothing. You're going to get no air. And you should even see it's getting no air. Including looking at the manifold, should flow 0. While fuel is still running. Well, yeah, not even fuel. Right. So the reason why the throttle is at 0 is that the controller is reading 0 air. Despite the throttle being open, it's getting 0 air through it, so it gets no fuel. Which is kind of nice, but I think it won't give, should be doing any, yeah, so you don't lose any fuel while doing this either. And as soon as I turn the pump on, now notice it also should balance the RPS out. That's about the same. I mean, these small pumps really don't do much anyways, but I've had it off of, well, you can still see that's still getting the same ratio for the fuel. It's still handling it just fine. Yeah, that should be just fine. Yeah, there we go. Post 14. 14.3. So you can see it still snaps back to where it should be at 13.2. Once it gets, you know, balanced out. We can go throw a bigger pump on here. Which one's the out? That's the out, alright. I'll just extend this over. Yep, fluid in. Good. And I'll just stick the power to it and stick that over to it as well. This will use a lot more air throughput. I think it's actually one of the most efficient. I don't know if it's more efficient than the larger impeller, but this will still work pretty good. And you can set it wide open as I did before. It will not run because it's not getting any air. That's off. Now this is getting a lot more air than what the other engine is doing, so it should make more of a difference in terms of balancing the RPS. And the get air come off this thing. There we go. Yeah, so it's idling at a bit higher than RPS than it was at 18, and now it's at 12. Or well, 21.2. And just as before, this will handle it just fine. And not care what kind of load is on it. It'll still run just fine. So let's actually throw a load on this thing. I'll turn this on a generator off it, or a generator would be just fine. And I doubt it's going to read much, being a one-cylinder engine. Should be all we really... Oh, right. Yeah, I'll do a clutch, because I'm going to whip this thing on and off to show that you really, even if you're bouncing in and out of the water, if it's a boat or whatever else, it'll keep up with it just fine. So, put it about there, turn that on, and start. So I can flip this to a larger engine. Let's do it like so 3x3 on here. I don't picture anyone running a 5x5. It'll work, but I don't really hear of anybody really doing it very often. What am I missing here? That's what I'm missing. Oh. Well. In that case, I'll just... Really? How about... Give me some trouble here. This will just work. There. Problem solved. Alright. So it really wasn't a throttle, that was a problem. Okay, we've got that. We're still going to need a starter. Throw down a cylinder. And throw down the clutch. And the two manifolds. Probably won't run very long like that. That should fit just over top, and it does. Okay. Yeah, I think I demonstrated the running force induction doesn't affect this. So let's throw down the controller and the battery. I'll put it here this time. So once again, going to get the engine RPS off the crankshaft, send out the fuel throttle position to there, and the composite for the airflow off of the cylinder. And it should be all it needs to have. Yeah, I think it should be good. And that's toggled. Here's the pressed for the starter. And power. And we should be good. I don't think there's anything else that needs on here. Yep, that's it. And this should once again just run. And I just threw the exact same controller down. So I'm going to lower the throttle and start it. Let me make sure the correct cylinder is on here. No, it's on 3x3. Fuel's going where it's supposed to. Air is where it's supposed to. There's no exhaust. That's the problem. It's always something. Pretty sure that's it. It's got cylinders, got the clutch, it's got everything else. This should run. Because the fuel ratio is correct. I saw it at 13 something, so it should have been running. Oh, there it goes. Yep, there's the fuel, there's the ratio, and everything should be just fine. There does seem to be a problem with the throttle. So I can see this right here. I actually think something else is going on because the ratio is right, so I know my controller is doing just fine. There's a problem with the engine, so I'm probably missing something that I didn't think about. It's not getting any exhaust out. It's not getting any fuel. What did I screw up here? No, actually that's not going to help. Let's throw down... Oh, I deleted that. Okay, well, let's demonstrate a quick way to troubleshoot this. By creating something on the fly. This should only really need the composite in and a composite out. And that's pretty much it. And I'll take the composite numeric value out of here and multiply this by, as I said before, 10,000. And we can send this back out as another signal back in to channel 1, out to the instrument panel, and it should do just fine. And all the things I just, darn it. Let me just do this real quick. I'll do it again. Really? Come on, there we go. And the composite read, the composite write, and I'll hook the rest of that up once I get the other logic back in place again. Yeah, that's good. I won't bother renaming it this time. I'll just get these back in place. And that should work. I'll update that. And let's get the readings out of this thing. And see out and find out what this thing's doing. Okay. So let's give it some throttle and hit the power. Starts to run, then dies. And the airflow rate. So it's getting here. And let's just grab another one. Another read. And another write. And we'll just tag it on the end of here. This is going to convert it over to channel 2. Whoops. Let's get this back to 1 and have it start on channel 2. And we're going to do another multiplication. Again by 10,000. This will be the fuel reading, so that should pull channel 2 for the fuel flow for that. Starting on channel 1, there's only one channel available, and we're just piggybacking off that, then it should work. So, should get nothing because it's closed, get a little throttle while it goes. I guess that's right. Right, it's the flow of fuel, not the flow. So it's getting fuel into the engine. I mean, it's running. And that cuts off. And I'm not sure why it's immediately dying when that happens. I'm not sure why it's happening. it's even getting air and fuel. And it's about what it should be too. So yeah, the ratio is right. The exhaust is getting choked out. I don't know why. Well, something's going on with this thing that's not part of my controller, and I don't know what it is, because it runs and then shuts off. In fact, how about we just do something like this? And flip this around. Sometimes these engines just need to be torn apart and fit together again, and then it'll just work just fine. And I don't know why that happens. And let's get all of these linked up. Only because I don't trust the explanation that these are supposedly connected. I don't really believe that. Okay. Air, fuel, and exhaust. Let's double check logic. That's fine. That needs to get hooked up again. That's still running off the RPS of the crankshaft. This is still getting the value from the cylinder. Yep. And it's still getting diesel. Throw a clutch back on here. If I get a load this time. That should work. Apparently what I created is just exasperated the problem. It's got everything it needs to run, but it's not running. Oh, actually, it's not spinning fast enough. It's too much load on the engine. Or I should say it's too much load on the starter for it to start. So instead of getting a second starter, I'll just yank one of the cylinders off. And I lost all of this. Alright, let's do this. That should be good. Didn't change anything else. It says 2 RPS. It's not quite 2. I know it'll run off of 1 cylinder, or 2. this. So, another demonstration that'll run off 2 cylinders. That didn't do anything with the controller. It still dies though. I just don't know why. Pretty sure what this is a bug that's with these engines, where sometimes they simply will not run no matter what you do. You just gotta tear them apart, put them together again, and they're fine. So I'm pretty sure I don't have anything set in here. Just because I don't believe this is my controller, I'm throwing the entire thing out and starting over. Because I'm pretty sure this will work just fine by me doing this. Then I'll probably fix it. There it is. Really? Air throttle, composite, electricity, starter, exhaust. Well, that's what you get for not putting actual base on this thing. Now I can't get to it. Go throttle, hit the starter. And now it's not going to die. See? All I have to do is tear it apart and put it back together again. And now it's fine. Despite not being flat on the ground, I can't knock it back over. So, yeah, controller works. Just sometimes you'll get a bugged out engine that just doesn't want to run. You just gotta tear it apart and start over and it'll work just fine. So yeah, as you can see, the amp ratio runs at 13.2. For the most part, until it's knocked out off the limiter. Yeah, the max RPS we used to be 60. You can't change that, but yeah, we want to have 13.2. The only reason why this thing isn't getting ridiculously hot is that there's just nothing hooked up to it. It's not going up, it's not going down, it's just doing whatever. And it's only running at 1.17 throttle. These things produce heat based off of how much fuel is going through it, not the load. Well, yeah, essentially the load. Doesn't care what RPS you're at in order to create how much fuel is burning out of it. Which is different from how the older engines are. But yeah, it does work. Now that I've done it, let's go over to a 5x5. I wonder if it's a bug by trashing everything and not starting new, so it's still working with the old values of the old cylinder. That might be part of it. I have no idea why that would be. That'll be it, but it's just an assumption I'm going to have. So the 5x5s I cannot get started by a simple starter being chucked on there. It just doesn't work. There's too much load. As you can see, I had trouble getting it to run with just more than 2. So a 5x5 is going to have all kinds of problems. But this will still run off of what this would be. 5x5's clutch. I think it's lined up. Yeah, it's lined up. Chuck on the manifolds. Let's get the exhaust on here the first time. Get the air hooked up. Fuel tank hooked up. Just to make sure it's not diesel, even though it's the default's supposed to be anyways. And I'm gonna run one of my little electric starter doodads. Where's a motor? Better yet, where's a clutch? Because I want to demonstrate this thing. I don't need a clutch. Let's put a big battery on here too. Or I'm going to stick this. Yeah, that'll work. And just hook the electricity up to that. I don't think it needs, yeah, that's fine. I'll hook up one for clutch, one for the actual throttle. Clutch pressure, and one over to the air throttle. And grab my little EFI thing here, stick it on the end. Grab the engine RPS, send out the fuel manifold and the reading from the cylinder. And once again, that should be all it needs to be. Come on. Throttles are hooked up, that's hooked up, got a composite, and we got power. There's no button. Right. This is going to be an interesting thing. I'm going to run both the clutch and the motor off of this. Because as soon as it spins the engine up enough that above 2 RPS, it's going to take off, and I'm going to immediately shut the throttle down, which then should release the clutch and also shut the motor off. Yeah, so that's doing just fine. So as soon as I touch that, oh, something wrong here. Oh, right. Unlike before, I didn't actually tune the thing to a 5x5. There we go. Notice the fuel was low. The fuel ratio was low. So this will get back to a decent RPS. And as soon as I touch this thing, it should just take off. Yep. Let's put it back out. So the clutch is... There's that same bug again. So there's definitely something funky with... Yeah, there's definitely something funky with... See, the fuel ratio, everything is right. It's just that it doesn't want to run. There's some kind of bug with modular engines. I know my system's right, but there's an issue with them. I don't know what it is. But yeah. To give further demonstration, I've got here it is, a testing ring here, where I've got, and this was me messing with the EFI, make sure it works with all different configurations, and it's literally starting with a single cylinder, and the cylinder's on the bottom, starting with a single cylinder engine and trying all kinds of different layouts, whether it's a flat 4 to a flat 6 to a flat 8 to, I guess I'll call this a T. I'm not really sure what that would be. I don't believe there's a cylinder on the bottom. No, there isn't. To all kinds of different scenarios, and they're all running the same EFI. This is actually an older one before I called it the version 2, but yeah, they're all running out the same EFI with a set of 3 gearboxes and a generator. This is when I was testing what's most efficient between that as well as messing with an air pump burning off the engine. And let's look at this. I haven't looked at these for a while, so I'm curious what... where is the... Oh yeah, the EFI is in between the pumps. So this is an older one. But it's basically the same thing. It's still multiplying it by 10,000. You're still getting composite 1. You're still dividing it by the engine RPS. And you're still dividing it by here. Now that is the exact same thing that'll be for a 1x1 cylinder that I have in that drop-down list. So that's still the same. Ratio is still the same. So this is the exact same you know, formula to get that output. So you're still reading the output to the fuel, you're still getting the engine RPS, and you're still getting the composite off of the cylinder. It's exactly the same. The difference with these, I think I have these going through a PID, maybe not. No, it's going right to it. And I've got that going to the air pump. Now the nifty thing with the air pump is that it does not care whether it gets anything or not. It'll still just run. That's just a giant fuel tank, because I got tired of trying to run, you know, remembering to put down fuel tanks on there. Actually, that's, oh yeah, it's split in the middle. It's half diesel, half jet fuel. Yeah, so let's start this up. And that reads off the generator. This really doesn't care. So I just changed one of the gearboxes to a 3-to-1. By default, they're all 1-to-1s, but I've changed it to a 3-to-1. And that's after aspirator. As soon as I start engaging that, you'll notice the power goes up a little bit, and I can drop it back down. You'll see it go back down once it's... I just took the load off the engine, so I probably left it for something. Yeah, that's essentially what all of these were. Give this, there it starts to go up a little bit. So yeah, this is when I was testing out the efficient engine layout. Again, running off that same EFI, and you saw what I just did to the thing. That's radically changing the load on the engine, and it does not care. Nor does it care what you do with the air. It should always be giving you a 13.2. I know what you're doing. Even if you go to something more radical, like, let's say, one of these ones. Let's take this one. This is still a belt off the pump, and looks like it's a 12. Yeah, it's 12. 12 cylinder. Still read. It's a little off. Probably because it's getting air shoved into it. Well, it should be. Yeah, it really doesn't still read 14.4. It doesn't care if you're forcing air into it or not. It's just going to be a little off. That or I had the ratio a little different. I was messing with some stuff. Yeah. It was the load. I think it's probably why it was up. Yeah, these generally do not care. They'll run regardless. I was also doing some 3x3 cylinder engine ideas, trying to get them to see when they start to explode based off cooling. This is how much cooling you really need to do for these things, in case anyone's curious. You do need to run that many radiators. This is basically a 2 radiator per cylinder. Kind of a get up and out of 2 together here. I'm trying to keep it as compact and efficient as I could. And it does work. Oh, and for reference, this 2-cylinder inline 2 puts out more power than a single vanilla engine, vanilla, whatever you want to call it, classic medium engine. Not a whole lot, just a little more. And these run off that exact same. Oh yeah, I have an ignition module I eventually throw in there, but it's actually, no, this has my newer one. So that should have, right, as I started messing with the larger cylinder, larger engine, so I had to put that drop-down list in there to make it easier to flip between them. But yeah, these run off of the newer setup. Oh yeah. Because this has my ignition module to it, so I can give it a constant setting so it's always on. And as you can see, it still runs off 13 too. I did notice there's a bit of a bug when it comes to how much power it puts out. So if I let that fly, I've noticed they get locked in. I don't know what that is. There figure that out. After I built this whole thing. I don't know what it's about. Alright, I think it's good enough to explain how this thing works. So, good luck. The link to the controllers in the description. Go ahead and grab